So what's up, guys? Paul Salmon here. Coming up next, we've got an interesting interview with a former Navy pilot and Fedex pilot, Mr. Mike Hazelwood. So stay tuned.
Gonna do a little straightening.
Yeah, we'll do a little nap of the earth here this morning. Don't have any guns. I'm all out of guns this morning. So. Extra gravity coming over. Square 567 Charlie, departing the main, the adjacent taxiway. With the left brake out to the northeast sector.
Okay, so I'm here with Mike Hazelwood, and Mike is an interesting fella. He actually was in the Navy and flew the aircraft that's actually parked across from our hangar here. And I sort of got an idea about doing some interviews with people. I get a lot of very interesting individuals that come through here and fly with us and do various types of training, helicopter, gyroplane, that sort of thing. And I sit down with them and we have the most interesting conversations in the world that are just priceless. And I think, man, I should have been recording these. And also, guess what? You're the first victim. We're going to have that. So this doesn't have to be formal at all. I want you to just tell me, how the hell did you get into aviation?
Well, it's kind of interesting, or not interesting. I always wanted to fly, and I'm not sure how it got into my blood or anything else, but I always had that desire that I wanted to get in an airplane. And I grew up with cotton fields in my backyard and used to watch the crop dusters and think, man, if I could ever be a crop duster, that'd have to be the best job in the world.
Yes. So, you actually get paid to do that.
Yeah, you get paid to do it. But anyway, that desire kind of passed to be a crop duster when one of my family's friends got killed in a crop duster crash. So, but being a country boy, I really didn't know how I was going to get into aviation. But my father had a construction company, and I used to go down to I call it the lumber yard, and I'd get his scraps and try to build airplanes and throw them off the top of his warehouse, and just to see if I could get something to fly. And I guess I was fortunate in that everything flew like a brick, and nothing really glided down, because I probably would have been hanging onto the bottom.
That'd take right on one of them.
Yeah, so fortunately I didn't do that, but I did get into building model aircraft and flying control line airplanes and a few RC airplanes, that sort of stuff. And but that burn was always there to go fly. And finally, in about 1969, I had a friend of mine, Don Gunner, who that came up here to get a helicopter check out. We were home one summer for college, and he says, let's go fly. And I didn't know he had a pilot's license. So I said,
oh, maybe he didn't at the time.
Maybe he did.
Knowing Don,
who knows? But anyway, he and I rented a Cherokee 140 one day, and I went, wow, this is pretty cool. And I think it probably cost us $4 or $5 each to fly that little airplane around, and we flew for probably 30, 40 minutes, something like that. The next day we went back up, and I was hooked. And so I started trying to figure out ways to start taking flying lessons, and Don and I actually joined the Civil Air Patrol in Blytheville, Arkansas, which was about 40 miles away from our home, and we were able to rent a Cessna 150 for gas and oil. Was all that it cost us. So I started flying with Donald. No official lessons. I did find out he had a commercial ticket, and he was working on his CFI.
He was allegedly licensed.
Alleged license. So I was his guinea pig, and he was trying to teach me how to fly. But I finally reached the point where I had a job making enough money that I could afford to go start taking lessons, and so I started officially taking lessons for real, and had my first logbook with an official hour in it and that sort of stuff. And I soloed on my fourth flight, and I was into my 5th hour of instruction. So, and it went from there.
Yeah. What airplane did you first fly?
Well, outside of that Cherokee 140, I learned in a Cessna 150.
Yeah, that's the same thing here. I learned in the Cessna 150, and I think most of the guys that are around were pretty close on age.
I agree.
Everybody learned they grew up on Cessnas.
Absolutely.
Cessnas and Pipers.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But the Cessnas seem to be more prevalent
Yeah.
and probably a little easier to fly.
Yeah, they were flying Volkswagens. I mean, they were everywhere back in the 70s.
They were everywhere. Not only that, they were easy to get in and out
Yeah.
of, where you didn't have to climb up on the wing and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. When I weighed about 130 pounds, I could get in and out of them. Hell, that either I can get in and out of them right now. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
That's for another subject. So.
All right.
But
so where did you go from there?
Well, after that, I was in college, and when I could save up enough money, I found a guy in college that would rent me his 150, and I'd go fly his 150, an hour or two a month just to stay with it, and finally got my private pilot's license in 1970, and got that, and then from there, what really drove me from that point on was there was a draft lottery, and I was number 2 on the draft lottery, so I knew real quickly that I
needed. You were going to get an all expenses vacation.
I was going to get all expenses paid to Southeast Asia. So I went down to the local recruiting square where all the branches of the service were, and I'm standing at the door of the Navy recruiter, and he looks at me and he says, "Hey, come in here, you want to fly jets?" And I said, "Where do I sign?"
Yeah, you got the right guy.
I'll tell you, you picked the right one. And actually the reason I went to the Navy is I had a good friend of mine that used to fly F-8 Crusaders, and he and I used to talk. He actually got shot down in about 1969 in Southeast Asia, but made it back out to his ship and punched out, ejected out of his airplane, and got picked up. And we talked about that, but he explained all about it to me. But that's what drove me to the Navy, and so I started pilot training in 1972 in Pensacola. I started on the T-34B and had probably got, I don't know, 50 hours in that, something along that line, and then went from there to fly the T2A and B models. The T2A model was a single engine T2 that we'd get on the runway, hold the brakes, push the power up, push a clock to see how quickly the engines would run up, and if they didn't come up in a certain amount of time, you didn't fly.
Yeah, shut it down.
So, and then
that's your power check.
That was my power check, and then the T2B was a twin engine, and flew that for, gosh, I can't even think, probably 100 hours or so, and then went to the TA4, finished my pilot training in the TA4, actually flew the airplane that's sitting out here at some point in time, and then...
You fly at Pensacola?
No, I'm sorry, after I left Pensacola flying the T-34, I went to Meridian, Mississippi, to fly the T2 and the TA4, and then when I got my wings, of course, in 1973, Vietnam is over with, so the Navy is throwing people out left and right, got too many pilots, and so I stayed in as an instructor flying the TA4. So I spent several years flying the TA4, and then the way my career actually goes is, and this is kind of funny, growing up a country boy in Arkansas, I'm home for a long weekend after being in Meridian in September of 1972 down in Meridian. I was home for a long weekend. I went to Little Rock to a football game, ran into a friend of mine who said there's a guy over here named Fred Smith starting a company called Federal Express. Yeah, you've heard of him. And he's looking for pilots. And I said, well, that sounds real interesting, but I got 5 years left in the Navy. But I started following FedEx then. And when I got out of the Navy, I had a couple of friends already at FedEx and walked in with my resume and got hired to fly the Falcon.
Yeah, cool.
So, and my progression there was I flew the Falcon, then I flew the 737 that a lot of people don't realize FedEx had 737s, but we had 5 brand new 737s that we purchased from Southwest, and it was actually the slots for those airplanes.
Oh, okay.
And got those airplanes, and then the company ended up buying 727, so I moved to the 727 and flew all 3 seats in that, flight engineer, first officer, and captain, and actually became an instructor and check airman on the 727. Then the next progression was to move to to the DC-10, so I moved up to the DC-10. I did not fly as a flight engineer on that airplane, but I flew as a first officer and a captain. And I actually was selected as an instructor and check airman on the DC-10. And then when we bought the MD-11, I was selected as the first chief flight instructor for that airplane. So I got to go out to McDonnell Douglas and do a lot of work on the initial setup of the airplane, got to do some test and acceptance, got to do, you know, some course development and even some certification work on it. So,
What'd you end up flying at the end of your career?
The MD-11.
MD-11.
I flew the MD-11 from 1991 to 2009 when I retired.
Man, all right.
So,
did you have a pretty much set routes that you flew?
No,
you go a little bit everywhere?
You bid for each line based on your seniority. And I had quite a bit of seniority.
That hadn't changed either.
That hadn't changed anywhere. And so I had quite a bit of seniority, but also as an instructor, I didn't have to worry about bidding lines as much because I got to, I could just go fly a trip with somebody, and that worked out pretty well. So went to a lot of neat places.
Yeah. How much did you do? A lot of international flying, or mostly stateside?
You know, I had a good selection of both. I liked some of the international flying. To be perfectly honest with you, it was not the easiest thing in the world to do to adjust to that many time zone changes. But one of my favorite places that I really enjoyed flying to was I enjoyed flying to Stansted in England, and going there I got to have enough time there that I've been to Duxford Air Museum, where they do reenactment of the Battle of Britain every year. And so I didn't see that actual thing, but I've been to that museum. You know, flown to Osaka, flown to Tokyo, you know, can't even think of all the places. Penang.
Well, you know, the world's a far different place than it was even 20 years ago. But you know, we got communications.
Yeah.
You can be in Japan, pull your phone out of your pocket and call home.
Make a call, exactly.
And you know, even 20 years ago, that was not.
No, that
wasn't the way. You know, you really felt more isolated when you were somewhere else. You know.
Right.
But man, now you can, you know, it's just communications are lightning fast and call anywhere to anywhere. You know?
What did we do before we had cell phones?
I have no idea. Or your parents never knew where you were when you were a kid.
I used to have.
Maybe that's good. Too.
Maybe that was good. I used to have a device that I could put on the phone in the hotel room that had, because you know, not all the phones had push button on them. Some of them still had dial tones. And in hotels, a lot of times they didn't have anything because you picked up the phone and
they had to go through
the operator there. But I had a device that I could put on the transmitter portion of the bottom portion of your phone. I could screw that off, screw this little device on. I could talk to them, get them to patch me through to the FedEx operations that would connect me with numbers. And this little device was a push button phone dialer, and I could punch in whatever number I wanted to call and do it that way. Cool. So it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I actually found that in a drawer not too long ago.
So, it was like a piece of space equipment.
It was.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. It's pretty interesting. So, it's kind of funny. Most kids, well, half the adults don't even know what a dial.
Oh, heavens
is.
no!
You know, they're used to push buttons. Well, cell phone. Nobody knows what a phone is other than cell phone anymore. So, anyway, so what year did you retire from FedEx?
I retired officially from FedEx in 2009, and I'd been retired about. I still tried to keep my hands in general aviation a little bit and do some flying. As you know, I owned an RV-8 at one time, and don't have that anymore. But I tried to keep my hands in general aviation. But I've been retired probably 6 or 7 years, and I get a call from FedEx to ask me if I would like to come back and work with the new hire pilots. So that's what I do part time now. And like I say, my friend Don told me about coming up here to fly with you and fly the gyrocopter, which I said, I'm never going to get in one of those.
Yeah, you must be crazy.
He must be crazy.
That was my next question. So how in the hell did you end up here?
Well, there you have it. Donald came up here to, I guess he started in the gyrocopter.
Yeah.
Because he was getting a helicopter rating.
Yeah, he got his gyroplane rating down with Mark Sprigg down in Gulf Shores, and then he came up here to complete his helicopter rating and did a fine job with it. Had a ton of fun. He's got a nice twisted sense of humor, so he fit in really well here.
Yes, he does. It is a different kind of humor. But he's the one that told me to come up here and get with you, and I was very skeptical the first day I walked in the door and looked at that little M16 out there and said, am I going to get in that thing?
Yeah, a lot of people go, there's not very much aircraft there. I'm like, nope, and that's kind of the fun part.
But I'm going to tell you, the moment we took off, I said, this could be dangerous. I could be hooked.
Yeah. But the most dangerous part about flying a gyro is you want one.
That's exactly right.
But it's about as close you can get to just true flying. It's almost like we always describe it as a motorcycle that'll go up. It's more than a sensation like riding a motorcycle that'll go up.
Exactly.
Never had anybody go for ride one that said, just get me out of this thing. This is horrible. I mean, everybody falls in love with it. Once you just got to get them in there. Kind of
that's
I had
exactly
a few people
right.
I couldn't talk into getting in there, but
now I've got a feeling my wife might not get in.
Yeah, I've had a couple. It's kind of funny that you mentioned. I had a student one time that he was learning how to fly. He actually had a couple other gyros that he didn't like the design and decided he wanted to get a Magni, but then he came over and he said, you've got to convince my wife that this is going to be a good idea, so you're going to have to take her for a ride. And I'm like, okay, well, just bring her over and we'll go for a ride. So I put her in the back of the aircraft, so make it a low-key ride and just let her maneuver the aircraft all around. She had so much fun, she ended up getting her license.
Oh, no kidding.
And she ended up flying more than he did.
No kidding.
Yeah, so we got back on the ground. I was like, that was an easy sell. I think she's going to let you get it up.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. So.
I don't think that'll happen with my wife. I just got that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife used to fly with me all over the place, but we, with kids and grandkids and dogs and granddogs and all that, don't have much time to do it anymore. But I could never convince her to fly the aircraft. She didn't want to touch it. She'd go for a ride, and she'd put up with anything I'd do in the aircraft, but never could convince her to take the controls. I'm like, well, hell, I might pass out someday. You might want to know how to get on the ground. But
come to think of it, I don't think I've owned 182s. I had an AA1 at one time, and I don't think she's ever put her hands on the stick or the yoke or anything else either.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But a lot of times, if you can convince your wife that it's a good idea, it sure makes it a lot. Aircraft ownership becomes a lot more trouble.
Sure does.
So anyway, all right. Well, I don't want to waste any more of your time. I know you need to get on back to Memphis, but man, I sure appreciate this. And I think I'm going to make this kind of a series. I've got interesting people. I had one guy that was he was German and flew for the German Airlines, flew 747s. In fact, he started out on 747s.
Really?
So I got to get him back here and get him to start talking up.
No, as many people as you meet, I think that's a super
It's great.
idea.
It's great. So I got to make that. Something I got to do with about everybody.
And I'm your guinea pig.
All right, Mike. Appreciate you putting up with us, man.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again soon.
All right. See you in a couple of weeks.
So I hope you found that interesting interview. I think I will do this as a series, and I'm just going to title it Interviews in Aviation, because we get some really interesting guys coming through here, guys and gals, and I look forward to the next interview. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.